Digital 410 Productions proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast with your hosts Dodd Abernathy, Jeff Copsetta, and Henry Sledge.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II based podcast. Our music's still a little bit loud because we got new software. But anyhow, we're back from vacation. I think, yes, vacation. It's been I think so. No? Maybe? Possibly. I don't know. I've had a super crazy week. And anyhow, it's Monday, I guess. And joining us for this episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast is our friend, as always, Mr. Jeff Copsetta, Henry Sledge. And our guest of the day, I'm actually going to give Jeff or Henry, we're going to go with Jeff. I'll give Jeff the honors. Jeff, you want to go ahead and introduce our nice guest today?
Yeah, appreciate it, Don. So our guest tonight is somebody that we're really excited to have on.
Absolutely.
Wealth of knowledge, researcher, and it was a kind of a by chance invitation. Got an email from, I wanted to give a shout out to fineartofdecals.com, Mr. David Klaus over there at fineartofdecals.com. Decals being the water slide insignias that we use for scale models, for those of you who don't build model airplanes or don't build models at all.
Is that the technical phrase, water slide?
That's probably the least technical phrase.
See, I'm not in the model decal, so that's cool. I never knew it actually had I just called them stickers, but yeah, so water slide. That's
stickers.
Makes
stickers
perfect
would
sense.
Probably be even less of a technical term. Yeah,
I think the last time I built a model was probably 1983. So it makes perfect sense though. Water slide. That's
right. So yeah, I've mentioned on the show before that I'm a big scale model hobbyist, and just happened to be on an email list from this great company who has a good friend that we're going to have on tonight, Mr. Dana Bell. And when I first heard about him and his new trilogy of books, I knew I had one of his publications on this bookshelf somewhere. And this is just one of the many that you see behind me. And we're just going to let Mr. Bell tell us all about it. So without further ado, Dana, thanks for coming on What's the Scuttlebutt tonight. And love having you on.
Pleasure, Jeff. Pleasure. Glad to be here. Appreciate joining in with you. As I mentioned when I was corresponding with Jeff, I saw one of your podcasts and realized it was a bunch of enthusiasts talking enthusiastically, and it just seemed like too much fun not to join in.
Well, I'm excited that you emailed Jeff, because that is an indicator that our little show is getting out there.
Indeed.
When gentlemen like yourself with such a catalog, as I was looking at the catalog you have behind you, so the fact that our little podcast somehow made it your way, that is a huge puts a smile on my face. So welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here. Pleasure.
So give us a little background. How did you get into the line of work that you got into and coming up with books, and in particular the subject matter of your books?
Mm-hmm. Well, I started out, I wanted to be an engineer. And there's a really filthy word. I don't know if you can say this word on the air, but it's called calculus.
Oh,
and I'm sorry, I apologize. But calculus tore me a new one. And I learned very quickly I was probably not going to be much of an engineer. But I was a big plastic modeler, loved the stuff. And one of my roommates was at the student union and saw a guy reading a model airplane magazine and put the two of us in touch. And this was up in upstate New York, and they had a modeling group up there that actually produced a modeling magazine called Flight Plan. And one day they said, geez, you ought to write an article, write something about the American mosquito. And we're all going down to the National Archives. Why don't you come along? And I thought it sounded pretty good. And eventually I figured out I was the only one with a car. So we're all going down to the National Archives meant we might be going down to the National Archives. And this was 1972. I had my first time in the archives. And within a few hours, I was madly in love with primary research. It was just too much fun. And I've been writing ever since. Just keeps things going. I ended up working for the Air Force at their historical still photo depository in early '76. And then at the very end of '81, moved over to the National Air and Space Museum. And I retired about 16 years ago just so I could write full time. And it's been a blast.
I can imagine. I know that's one of the newly developed loves that Henry has is he's been spending a lot of time on the behind the keyboards, and he's also one of those who would love to just be able to write full time and do podcasts on the side and just get all his interest out there.
Well, Henry, you came by it naturally. It's in your veins.
Yeah, but hey, man, I mean, I'll echo what Jeff said. I love the scale modeling stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Corsair cockpit in and of itself is a subject of great passion of mine. I love Corsairs.
Yeah. That's the latest book, obviously, but that one came about almost as a response to COVID. My first two Corsair books were for Steve Wiper out at Classic Aircraft and Aircraft Pictorial Series. We were initially going to cover the Hellcat, and then we found out that Tamiya was releasing the series of models in 1/32 scale for the Corsair. So we rapidly switched over and began working on the Corsair. Researched for 2 years at the National Archives, the Air and Space Museum, bought records.
Wow.
Yeah. My own rule, I've only got so many books in me. And my rule for me is I'm not going to write a book that doesn't tell you something you don't know, because I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste your money.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it's harder to maintain that goal as time goes by? Because obviously there's so much interest in the subject matter at hand, World War II, aviation.
Yeah.
And as time goes by, more and more content's being written by the information that's available at the National Archives through word of mouth, photos, etc. So have you gotten to the point where you had an idea for a book, but following your guidelines that you made for yourself, you're like, well, can't do that one. That one just came out, something similar came out. That subject matter's out there. So let me redirect and head a different way.
Absolutely. I'd much rather buy somebody else's near perfect book than fail in my own attempts to write that near perfect book. I'd love to write about the Mustang. I found a number of things that are different that have never been published, but I've never found enough to justify a book that I write. There are so many people that are so close to the P-51 and have done so much. I'm going to wait for somebody else to write that book. You see an awful lot of people doing research at the archives every day. I was there today, and it was nearly full on the second floor. And you see an awful lot of people writing books on these different subjects. But unfortunately, we don't get to see enough people that are actually at the archives doing the research, then come back and writing the book to go with it. And there's just, all right, my two Corsair books, my 3 Corsair books are different. They change a lot of what we believed the history of the Corsair was. It's not because I'm a better researcher or anything like that, but the archives has done a magnificent job of processing new materials, things that had been in Federal Record Center or centers, things that had been in the archives but needed a better finding aid to negotiate your way around it.
I'm sure when they start digitizing stuff, that made it a lot easier. And I just had a thought, I just mentioned a few minutes ago, as time goes by, more and more content's getting covered. But as time goes by, more and more stuff's being declassified. So there's new stuff coming out all the time.
Absolutely.
Real quick question. You said you were recently at the archives and the place was full. Are you noticing a younger group of cats in there, or is it, basically the older crew like us?
Well, I'm the older crew. You guys are a lot younger, but there are a lot of youngsters there. We had a crew in this week and last from Brown University. My youngest son is just about 20 years old. He's there working with me right now.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, it is. It's wonderful. He's impressed the living daylights out of me. if we're just chatting, I'll give you the background story on why my youngest is at the archives.
Sure.
But when he was in grade school, we were a one-car family, so I had to drive and pick him up every day. Meant I left the archives like 1:15, 1:30 at the latest. But they used to have bags of 3 little chocolate chip cookies that you could buy with the lunchroom, and I'd buy the bag of cookies, and I'd eat one with my lunch. And when he got into the car after school, that bag was there with 2 cookies in it every day. And pretty soon he got the idea, hey, this National Archives must be really special. They've got cookies. And it worked out pretty well. We eventually got him there when he turned 16, and he's been working with me a lot lately and doing some pretty fine work.
See, that's the two things that fathers and sons have in common. They say the quickest way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Well, same thing for young boys. Straight through the stomach.
Indeed, indeed.
So, Dana, I was just, so I'm down in Texas now. I've been here for over 20 years, and I live about an hour north of Austin. So that's the closest opportunity that I have to go to a hobby shop, because that's just something that's near and dear. My grandfather used to build, balsa and linen biplanes that he would use, make his own blueprints out of. And then, of course, that passed down to my dad, who's more of a model railroader now than a model, airplanes or ships. Then, of course, my whole childhood. I mean, anytime I smell model glue, it takes me back to my childhood, and I never grew out of it. It's still what I do. And then my oldest son, he's 16 now. He's a fabulous modeler. Oh, my goodness. But, of course, the models they have now, it's just no fair. He's got a Dauntless in 1/48 with, photo etched brass dive brakes. Like, man, I didn't have that on the Revell kit as a kid.
Is it a Revell kit, Jeff?
Oh, gosh, no. This is, I don't even know. This may be an Accurate Miniatures or something. Okay. I can't remember. It took me a while to find them, that particular one for Christmas a year or so ago. But so the other day I was at the hobby shop in Austin, the last one left. They moved to all these different business strip malls. They're constantly having to downsize, and it's depressing to see these hobby shops. I hate to say it, but eBay and Amazon, they're putting them out of business.
Walmart.
Yeah. And so I bought a few things there, and I bought a few things, and I don't think my wife will listen to this episode. I spent like $400 there. And
la 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 la.
Yeah. And it just, and I've mentioned this, I think, before on the show with the hobby. You used to be able to spend $10 and go home with a model airplane. You just can't do it. I understand quality and all this stuff. That's great. But what are your thoughts on the cost of this hobby for young kids to get into it? I just think it's outrageous, number one. And number two, does that affect you in any way? Do you depend on the adult modelers, or do you see, kind of like going back to Don's question, is the torch being passed to keep this history alive in the scale model world enough to justify I can't imagine the time and the eye-bleeding research that it takes for you to do a publication like that? What are your thoughts going forward?
I think the hobby will continue to survive. It will be reduced. Things will get more expensive. There aren't as many youngsters that are interested in it, but there are still youngsters that are interested in it. And I think the thing I've seen is the dads who sit down building their own models usually have the kids get interested, and they want to join whatever dad is up to, sons and daughters. And every convention I attend, there's a cadre of smaller kids out there building models, and some of them, geez, I never had that kind of quality when I was a modeler. I still, by the way, I think of myself as a modeler, but it's been a good 20 years since I've glued anything together. I've often said, if you're sitting in front of the TV watching Project Runway with your wife, and you got an open aircraft in profile on one knee and an open box of plastic on the other, and you enjoyed yourself with your wife, with the TV, and part of the hobby in your lap, that's good enough. You
There you
didn't
go.
do anything, you didn't pay me anything, but I had a good time. By the way, I've watched a number of Project Runway shows, and I haven't seen an airplane land on that damn thing yet. It's just something not right there.
That's what I refer to as by proxy watching. It kind of relieves you a little bit of the guilt. You're watching it by proxy.
Ah, yes.
Now, as I stated before, it's been years since I've picked up that white tube with the orange label at the top and cracked open a few models. I can only imagine that the quality and detail on the parts before they're assembled has gone through the roof with the advent and availability of just computers and the technology that they're able to scale these things with and detail versus how they're doing them back in the 70s and 80s. I'm sure that you could see a tremendous difference in just the quality of the model itself before you even assemble it.
Oh, Lord, yes. Yeah.
What,
Well, back in the 50s and 60s, you were lucky to get a model that actually had landing gear or had a plastic canopy. And a lot of the models I had in the 50s just had the frame, and then they had a little strip of plastic across the top to represent where the canopy would have ended. All solid one color. You didn't have to paint them. But the hobby has just been insane. It's been wonderful. I keep hearing the hobby is dead, and I think this is the real golden age for building models of anything. Photo etched brass, you mentioned, resin cockpits. Oh Lord, all this computer generated resin pieces that they're creating now. It's amazing.
Here's a question. Over time, different outlets, magazines, manufacturers, groups, what have you, they have to find a way to evolve with the times to stay relevant, to continue making money. Has any of the major modeling companies put out downloadables so that people with 3D printers can make their own pieces to assemble models, basically make them at home using, pay service? Here you can download, for $2, whatever, download the chart and print one up yourself and then assemble it? Has that become a thing yet?
I won't be surprised when it happens, but
Yeah.
I've not seen it happen yet. I think the 3D printing that's going on now is it's taking off. It's just amazing. But you buy the final product. You don't buy the tools to make the final product. And I guess that's the problem with anything computerized. You buy one and then you copy it and use it and give it to your best buddy and he uses it and his 6 kids use it and they do the same thing. It's hard. It's like electronic downloadable books. The devil's own way to get ripped off. It saves the Russians and the Chinese the necessity to actually digitize your work when they steal it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sad, but it's true.
Well, I mean, if there's any sort of bright light at the end of the proverbial tunnel, if you will, we all know that every generation finds a way to rebel against whatever their generation has to face. And we're already kind of seeing it now. At least a couple of years ago, you heard it amongst like the females in college, how they're kind of going analog rebellion. Me growing up in Kentucky, all the females in my family, they all know how to crochet. They all know how to make Afghans and all that. And that kind of died off with my generation. But a couple years back, I'm hearing stories where college-age girls kind of the rebel against digital everything. That's kind of coming back in fad where people are starting to learn how to crochet again. And so maybe some of the younger kids who kind of want to rebel against the digital or looking for something to do that's not what everybody's doing, maybe models will come back around even stronger for a while, because everything seems to come in ebbs and flow.
Yeah, I think there's room for it. Anything tactile where you create something, it's got too much draw, and the hard part is getting the kids to do it.
And Jeff, I'm sure Jeff can expand on this, but you said something very important: tactile. Whether you're a wood shop, whether you do construction for a living, you build computers and install. There's just something about, I was in this area, there was nothing here. I spent some time, I left, and now there's a physical, whether it's a model Mustang, a car, a computer, a wooden duck that you carved. there's something to be said about you physically creating something that will, as long as you take care of it, will be around for a very, very long time. And I think if more people got into that, there's so much relaxation there. We need to bring back the whole concept of quote unquote analog hobbies.
Indeed.
Well, and it goes beyond, to me, it goes beyond the hobby too, because it's a skill that to work with your hands, that it's something that you hone. It may not directly relate to what you're going to do in your adult life, but as an adolescent child or a teenager, it really does help in a lot of other things. Trust me, I've got 4 kiddos. I can't tell you how many things I've had to fix, super glue, assemble. It's just, it's like a crib or a bassinet on a much smaller scale. And you're not going to struggle as much as an adult trying to build this piece of furniture, when you can do the hobby. And so that, to me, that's something that you may not necessarily, always do it as an adult or be interested in the history. But from a mechanical, like you said, from a tactile perspective, it's important. Now, I know me personally, I do it. I did it as a kid because it's what I loved.
Everybody did.
It's definitely a deeper level now for me, as far as it's another facet for me to help keep history alive. And I'll give you an example of that. The Corsair I built is Tommy Blackburn's Corsair, right? Because in 148th, I used to build 172nd. I probably had 50 172nd scale fighters in my room as a kid, They're small, wingspan like this. Going into 148th, and of course everything else I had going on, you don't necessarily have the room for it. So I had to be kind of strategic. But I built Jimmy Thatch's Wildcat, right? He's known for the Thatch weave. George Bush's Avenger. Bud Mahurin's Spirit of Atlantic City P-47, for example. So, people that really made history. And sometimes I do pick an aircraft that's a little bit more obscure to give you a little bit more, artistic licensing with it. There's like one color picture. It is what it is. You can have a little more fun with it. But I think it's important. I think it's a nice way to memorialize these guys, because I'll also admit I built a scale model of my Humvee when I was in Iraq. I took a lot of pictures of the inside of that thing, because I thought if I ever make it out of here, I'm going to recreate this in a smaller scale. And I absolutely did. And quick personal story, I lost my driver to my truck a few years ago, and I had to put it down. I didn't, it took me a couple years to finish that build. But I finally finished it, and I actually took it with me to a little memorial that we did for him at a unit reunion, and it meant a lot to the other guys to see something like that. So maybe Captain Morgan, the pilot of Memphis Belle, maybe he's looking down thinking it's pretty neat to see a bunch of Memphis Belle models on shelves, all over the world on people's bookcases. Like I said, it's a little bit deeper level, and that's where you come into, Mr. Bell. The research, the next level that you've done. I can just say firsthand, thank you. It's appreciated, and I'm glad that you've done it.
I appreciate that. I think one of the things I enjoyed most early on with modeling was not just the building, but the learning. And if you go back to the older kits, the 50s and 60s plastic, when you opened up those instructions, they not only told you what this was, engine. No, it was this engine, this many horsepower. It gave you the background. As you were assembling things, it would tell you these were 50 caliber machine guns. This was a turret. It would give you all the story. I remember building sailing ships, learning about the names of the different rigs on the square riggers, and learning all those things that are all gone now because it's all been internationalized. You have everything as an icon or a pictograph or hieroglyphics for that matter. This is how you get it together, but you don't really care, or you care, but you don't really learn anything about what you just put together. And I think that's what I'm trying to do with a lot of the books. It's not just on this date, the national insignia had these bars and this red surround and stuff like that. It's why did they do it? Who decided? Why did they stop doing it? And who decided? And I think some of the fun that's really buried out there is the internal arguments that are going on at the time. The juiciest thing I've seen at the archives in the last few years are the right field telephone calls that were recorded and then transcribed, because nobody thought any of these conversations were going to be permanent history. And they'd get together and they would say, General so-and-so's an idiot, and these guys are stealing this part from our supply, and we can't get the manufacturer to do it. And it's the whole true story, not the story that's written up to make the boss look good. It's all out there. These wonderful stories of obscure details. And I think where I've been lucky is I'm interested in these obscure details, why things happen the way they did. And there are enough other people out there just as crazy as I am to enjoy reading about those things. Otherwise, I think I'd be out of business as a writer. It's crazy stuff. Yeah.
Going back real quick, one of the
Yeah.
things that I thought when Jeff was talking about his son working on models is not only is that a great tool to hone your hand-eye coordination. I mean, you got to hold the part in place until that glue sets up, but just patience. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the key trait to building a quality model is patience. I mean, one, patience to assemble the thing appropriately, but more importantly, patience not to try to get it all done in one night.
Yeah.
And just truly taking your time and appreciate seeing it come together, literally. And okay, slow down. Yes, we could probably fit five, but let's just take our time, make it right, keep the glue to a minimum, and
Yeah.
just get it done appropriately. And it'd be interesting to see if you were to take a child, maybe like an 8 or 9 year old, somebody who has maybe ADD or hypertension or something, and see if you can get them to sit down long enough and just start and see if maybe from the time, maybe a bigger project, from the time that project started to the time that finished, if you saw maybe they start getting more patient and their attention span grew in other areas, it would be kind of an interesting lab to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And good, Mr. Bell. I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, Don, you hit the nail on the head there, and that I do have these aspirations at the Highland Lakes Air Museum to have a club for kids, in the hangar.
Mm-hmm.
You could come out with a model airplane, or we even have a bunch of people sponsor a bunch of random kits and supplies, and the kiddos can come out at a specific time each week or whatever we do, one day a month, maybe a little model club, and let them work on it, and they could keep it there. That way, they're not in mom's way, they're not taking up the dining room table, the fumes aren't in their house, whatever, for whatever reason that they wouldn't be able to necessarily do it at home. I have for years, I have wanted to do something like that. And because you're absolutely right, it does teach patience and appreciation for something, an artifact that you have now created, a little piece of you. I mean, I have every model I built since I was a little kid. And every single, the first one was a P-51B.
And he looks at it now and says, "What was I thinking? I just completely slaughtered this thing."
I mean, I used to do pretty good. Now my dad would put the decals on for me. He would do the decals, but I would do all the assembly, all the paint. There's some early ones you could still see there's a little bit of a thumbprint in the wet paint probably here and there, but yeah, it does. It teaches, there's so many skills, besides, oh, look, an airplane,
Sure.
and that's one way I really want to help get that hobby, out there and reach other people, reach other demographics. And you never know, that kid may grow up to be an engineer one day, or something like that, so yeah.
Putting those two parts of it together, of a friend of mine who's since passed was a modeler back in the 40s and 50s. His parents told him, stop that, get into something where you can, eventually make a living or do something useful. Well, Hugh Hedges became an architect. He built not only designed buildings, but he built the architectural models to show them off. And probably his biggest project is the vehicle assembly building down at Cape Canaveral at Kennedy Space Center. He was one of the major designers pulling that all together. So yeah, I think that worked out in one case at least. My dad was an airplane nut too. He grew up in the age of, in the 30s. It was everybody was air minded. And as a matter of fact, he did become an engineer. And he was working in an engineering firm at the beginning of World War II. And he got drafted and went down, and all he had to do was show him where he worked, and he was exempt. But he decided that this World War II thing was just too important to be sitting home, building turbines for destroyers when he should be out there with a group of people fighting Nazis or Japanese, whatever. Ended up 188 combat engineers, Third Army, and still an airplane nut though. Couldn't be in the Air Corps. So they're out there in France being strafed by Me-262s. And Dad, being an airplane nut every bit as bad as I am today, is up there pointing out the differences to everybody. See, look, no propellers in front. See that glow at the back? These jets, and you're going to see a lot more of these in the future, with which a 30-millimeter round goes off not too far from him and scratches him across the back of his left hand. And, jets had no duration, no loiter time. They all went home. Dad went over to get his hand patched up. Didn't even need a stitch. They put a bandage on it. And guy reaches around his big box of Purple Hearts. Goes to give Dad his Purple Heart. And I'm not taking that. That's for the people that earned it. There are people out there in combat that did something that deserve a Purple Heart. And he refused to take the award. War comes to an end. They start totaling up the points. Who's going home first? And I think you can guess who was one Purple Heart shy of going home right away. And they sent him up to Belgium. Being an engineer, they had him doing water purification. And he met a gal, an English woman in the NAFI. And 3 years later, they got married. And a few years after that. So never take a Purple Heart unless you really deserve it. No telling what the future is.
That's a great story. We used to call them enemy marksmanship badges. Nobody wanted to come home with a Purple Heart, man. You didn't want to admit you got hit by one of those guys over there. What are you, the slowest guy or what? Yeah,
That's true.
Out of all the books you put together, which one, I don't know if I want to say problematic, troublesome, cumbersome, which one did you find was the most difficult to acquire the amount of information that you desire to have for one of your books? Which particular plane was just kind of your white whale when you set off onto this trip of yours?
It's actually one that is on hold at the moment.
Ooh.
I'm actually lucky it didn't get published 12 years ago because, and it's the story of U.S. Navy battleship and cruiser aviation before World War II. And it's, I think the thing that's been holding me up the most is that the Navy from 1925 through the beginning of 1942 painted the tops of the turrets on the capital ships and the cruisers in specific colors for each ship to distinguish them. The part in 1925 is very poorly documented. There's a switch somewhere in the mid-1930s, and then another switch in 1937. I've got most of the story down, but I haven't got all the pieces. And I'm going to have to be spending a lot of time down at Archives 1 on Pennsylvania Avenue, going through microfilm, which I hate to do. See if I can pin that story down the rest of the way. And it's all part of an evolution. At the same time, the organization is changing. If you can understand the markings, you can understand the organization. But at the same time, they're developing a whole new theory of how to put airplanes on ships. Um, I guess it's about 1937, 1938. There's a Captain Stott. Um, and Stott was assigned, he became captain of one of the battleships. And I want to say Idaho, but I don't want to do that from memory. But anyway, Stott has basically a Jerry Maguire moment. And he sits down and he studies all the what's going on with airplanes on his ships, and he writes a 3-page memo to headquarters about how everything we're doing is wrong. We can't store 3 airplanes when we only have 2 catapults. We can't put an airplane filled with gas on top of turret number 3, because if it gets hit, the gasoline is going to leak down into turret number 3, where it will not be a welcome addition to the gunnery practice. And he goes on and on explaining all these different changes. And the most telling thing about the whole Stott memo is a 2-inch by 2-inch piece of paper stapled to the front, pencil written, Admiral, somebody get to Stott and tell him to shut up until he knows what he's talking about. World War II came along, and every single recommendation that Stott made was put into practice. All those pre-war battleships that had catapults on top of turret number 3, all of those catapults were removed. They stopped carrying more airplanes than they could launch, because all they could do is push them over the side and abandon them once the battle started. All these changes came about, but Stott got no credit for it, and he did not get his flag before retirement.
Wow.
They brought him back to manage something during the war, but he was not given sea command again. And it's like, I want to find the Stott family wherever they are and say, hey, you know what? Your grandfather, he was something. He saw what nobody else wanted to see, and he tried to fix it, and they wouldn't listen. It's all buried out there in the archives, waiting for us to find it.
And we're lucky to have people like you, and you were mentioning earlier the ever-increasing number of people at the archives digging up this information. But you made a good point, and that is, you're seeing all these cats in there doing this research, but you got to wonder, where's this research going? And I always think of, what is it, the 92% rule? They always say that regardless of what kind of project you're starting, the easiest percentage of the work is the first 92%. It's that last little bit that people have the hardest time getting across the finish line and getting whatever it is out and done and into the world.
Yeah.
And
Samuel Eliot Morison, who wrote the Navy's World War II histories, to Ocean War and the multi-volume series that keeps getting re-released, also did a monograph on writing history. And he talks about how we love researching. We love finding out what's going on. And then we sit down and we start to write, and we get halfway through the first page and realize, oh, well, we don't know what kind of buttons he was wearing on his uniform that day. And we immediately stop writing and go off and start researching button wear in 1922 or whatever. It's that excuse that keeps us from getting the projects done. And it sure is fun to research.
It's so true.
It's hard to get it done. I'm a terrible writer, by the way. I've gotten pretty good at editing my stuff, but I find it very difficult. It's real work for me to actually put word on paper, or better yet, in the computer.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get the idea the way I want it to be.
It's so funny what you say about buttons, though, because we here in the living history community, we see that so much. And like right now, there's an event that just happened last weekend that was put in planning for years. It was an actual living history tactical event for Guadalcanal.
Oh.
And the guys were like, it got down to, hey, on the reproduction haversacks, the strap clamps are not the right shape. So I was like, you need to remove the ones that they put on there. And they were going, like you're talking about, buttons all the way down to like the clamp on the web gear for fastening your scabbard to your leg. These guys spent so much time detailing the things no one ever see, because one, you're 50 yards away, but two, just to make sure everything was right. It's just, you see it so often, and sometimes you wonder People go down the rabbit hole on that. But that in and of itself kind of leads interest in how we all operate with what interests us.
Mhm.
You'd be watching a show and it could be about Guadalcanal or about D-Day, and you see something in a photo like, wait, why did he have his spoon in his leggings? And then you spend 4 hours and you find out, oh, most cats threw away their knife and fork and they just kept their spoon and either put it in their pocket. Some people put it in their leggings, and now you learn something new. But it's something that 99.8% of the world could care. Who cares about why they carried their spoon in the leggings back in 1943? But that's just we all have our own little things that just jump up and grab us.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have a rule of thumb. If somebody asks for help, just what did we wear in our leggings in World War II? And you know that it was a spoon. You help out.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's building a model, what color green did they put on top of this B-17? And you happen to know it's dark olive drab. You help them out.
It's OD3. No, I thought it was OD7.
Yeah. But it's the folks that gather the knowledge and then use it as a weapon that always upset me. You've got those reenactors who put it all together and they're standing there. The last thing they want to hear after investing their hard-earned bucks is,
Mm-hmm.
that strap wasn't used. If somebody's looking for the right strap and you can get them to the right strap, help them by all means.
And it's not just living history; it's everything. Carrie and I,
everything.
Part of the reason we do our podcast so late at night is I have 3 parrots. I got an African gray, a lilac crowned Amazon, and a very annoying sun conure, and they go to bed at 7. So if I were to do a podcast prior to 7, you'd hear birds chirping in the background. I bring all that up to say this, to go back to what you're saying. World War II doesn't matter. Model building, you sign up for a Facebook parrot group 8.5 years ago, and you do computer work for 15 veterinarian clinics, and they all tell you how to take care of your birds and get them off seed, put them on pellets. But you sign up for that Facebook group, and you're on there for 2 hours, and you feel like you're the world's worst bird owner because everybody's telling you how you suck and you don't know what you're doing. And every group seems to be that, whether it's World War II, building models, parrots, making slime, whatever. It seems like, and it seems like it happened. Maybe it happened back in the day too, but it seems like more now. People sign up for groups not because they seem to have an overwhelming desire to prove what they know and that they know more.
I was just about to say they're just wanting to sound off about what they know.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's so insane.
That's not sharing.
But this is a good transition for a question I had. Jeff, you can answer this too. Every community has their subgroups, and I'm wondering what the line of demarcation is on this category. Do you have the groups of people who feel like, okay, you're going to buy the model. When you build it, it's got to reflect exactly what it looks like on the box? Or and then I'm sure maybe you have the guys who, I'm going to put some damage on here. I'm going to war this thing up and personalize it, make it my own. Are those 2 different camps, or is it just do it how you want to do it?
You want to take it first, Jeff?
Yeah, I think I know kind of what you're talking about.
I guess my question is there people who are like hold model building so delicately that they feel you need to make it exactly the way the engineer, it has to look just like the real thing, not pristine? Or do you have people who put the ward damage on there and customize it and make it completely their own?
Oh, yeah, I think there's a lot of there's more categories even than that. I mean, you bring up making it look exactly like it does on the box. I think any somewhat experienced model builder will make sure he's doing not what's on the box, because a lot of times what's on the box is not correct, or even what's in the instructions. I learned that pretty early on. I didn't do all of my research. I depended on what was in the instructions and a quick Google search maybe of a couple kits that other people built, and made the same mistake. And then I saw actual pictures, and I'll give you an example. It's the Avenger. It's the George Bush Avenger that I built. The instructions say where it said Barbara 3 right there by the cockpit was on the opposite side of the cockpit that it was really on. Oh man, I mean, that's a big foul, and you only get one decal, Yep. That was it. You have one shot with it. So it is what it is. For me, I'm not a rivet counter. I don't do a whole lot of that crazy. I mean, I read some of these reviews, these guys, and it's just like, dude, like, I mean,
You
good
have to
job.
wonder if they have a life.
It's great. And no, I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's a level that I will never get to, don't want to get to, because I know even with my dad, you know, in our model railroading community, I model in 3 different scales as well. I do like a large garden railroad, HO, and then N scale.
Oh, I thought you were
And
going to say hand
you know,
modeling, bikini modeling, and never mind.
There's Project Runway for you.
yeah, there you go.
That's called callback. Nice job.
But you know, we go to some guys that have these, you know, very serious model railroads, and they call it serious fun, but it's not even fun when you're operating. You've got to know the lingo, you've got to know railroad rules, you have to know all of the, you know, the railroad signals. Come on, guys, like, let's just run trains and let's watch them go around and let's have fun. So that's kind of, I want to be as accurate as I can, but I know my skill set. You know, I'm pretty good. Never going to win an award, but my kits are better than most of what I see from people I know. Not a competition. As long as I feel that I did some justice to the men who flew the aircraft, I'm happy with it. So I don't know if that answered your question, Don. I mean, like I said, I know there's a lot of groups. There's guys that got to be so far off, like some obscure P-51 that had, you know, with Brazilian Air Force markings or something, you know, they're out there. And I'll go back to Dave Klaus again with his company, to be able to offer, you know, used to open a kit and you'd have the picture that's on the box and maybe 1, maybe 2 other options with your, with which aircraft you're going to do, you know, what your markings are going to be. Now these guys are making these decals so you can go through, okay, I want to do, and that's how I found fine art of decals. Was I wanted to do the B-17 Aragao Sal. You don't just buy in 148th, oh, Aragao Sal, oh, there it is. But Dave Klaus made them, or his company offered them. I'm not sure which, but whatever it is, they were available. So that's great that you do have these other companies that are supplementing all of these other aircraft, you know, and they're the ones doing the research. They're the ones, just like Mr. Bell here, that are probably going to the archives, digging through, finding actual photographs that, you know, I didn't even know existed of these aircraft, and then replicating those markings so you can have a model of that at home.
Yeah, and Dave is among the many really good researchers when it comes to getting those decals right. And there's so many now that, well, for one thing, have become sensitive to the criticism, but more importantly, really do care about getting something accurate, getting things the right way, getting the thickness of the marking, the M on the side of the airplane, the right size thickness. I think the thing that gets me is I'll build something. I used to build something and just enjoy it for what it was. But there's nothing like the disappointment of getting a kit together and setting it down on the table, looking and say, it just doesn't look right. I can't tell why. And it's in cases like that, every now and then you'll get somebody come through and say, well, the fuselage is a ½ inch too long, and the taper begins so far forward, and suddenly you realize it doesn't look right, because instead of going this nice curve, it goes and just isn't what it should have been. There's a place for all of it. I think, frankly, I am a rivet counter, literally. When I was doing the book on the A-10 for Bert Kinsey, I counted every rivet on that airplane. And for the drawings I was doing, every rivet was in the exact right place for those drawings. And just after the drawings were finished, they took me about 2 months. And every now and then I had to run back, go take more pictures of an area I'd missed. But drawings were finished, and Bert sent them off to Monogram. So the 148 scale A-10 they released back in the 80s, it's got my rivet count on it. All right, so in one case, rivet counting paid off. The Corsair cockpit book right now is called Rivet Counter Guide #1. And the whole idea behind it is sometimes we're just really interested in minute detail.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah, go for it.
So Corsair cockpits, when you're researching vault
Yeah.
archive material, do you see much difference between Vault's cockpits and Goodyear's cockpits for the FG series Corsairs?
In that case, none whatsoever.
Okay.
It's only a matter of when the changes were introduced. They Vought may create the change. It may drift over to Brewster and may drift over to Goodyear a month or two later, or even later. For instance, there's a change with the paint inside the cockpit. Everything above the consoles on the sides gets painted black, right on the canopy rail. But that didn't happen on Vought, and it didn't happen on Brewster, because it happens in April 1945, by which time Brewster is Tango uniform, and Vought has moved on to the Dash 4 Corsairs. So, yeah.
Was it so? If you look at the floor of the cockpit in the early Corsairs, you had those foot troughs.
Yes.
Because I've read every memoir I could get my hands on. The guys talk about they would roll over and, chewing gum and gum wrappers and pencils and stuff would fall from the cockpit well down into their lap, and then they'd roll back over. But you had those foot troughs.
Yes.
And then didn't they go to a solid floor in the Dash 4?
They did indeed. The floor gets introduced on the Dash 4. And one of the interesting things that showed up in the archives is the reason. The description they got from the pilots was that they felt like they were sitting over a canyon. It was disorienting to have that much space beneath them inside the cockpit. I mean, you got 10,000, 20,000 feet beneath you outside the cockpit, but inside the cockpit, it bothered them. So they went for the floor on the Dash 4 and later.
I'd be interested in your take on this because, Boone Guyton, one of the chief designers, he was like 6'4". He was a big guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I've read that some people think he kind of influenced that, being a big, tall guy. Yeah. And then, as the Corsair evolved, I mean, a lot of pilots were not that tall.
Oh, yeah.
And so, some of the shorter ones, like, some of those guys were, I think Dan Cunningham in VF-17, I think he was like 5'4", 5'5". Wow. And I've heard he really struggled with, with those foot troughs and the rotor pedals. But
yeah,
I just, do you think Boone Guyton being so tall and having the influence, do you think that had something to do with that lack of a solid floor?
I doubt it was because of his height. I believe what they were trying to do was they had certain guidelines before the war. Remember, the airplane was designed before America was fighting.
Right.
It was designed to do certain things, and we knew how we were going to win the war. For one thing, all enemies would melt before us, simply in fear. But they designed this Corsair as this wonderful airplane, but they're trying to make it as streamlined as possible, which means you keep your cockpit low. They've only tested the XF4U-1, all right? Before they go into production, they put this massive fuel tank in front of where the cockpit was and moved the entire cockpit farther aft, right? It's got to work. Well, it had to work because the airplane went into production before they ever test flew this. And what they found was two things. The pilot is now sitting as low as he can get in the cockpit so that the cockpit isn't too high, slowing the airplane down, cutting into the slipstream. And at the same time, sitting down low with this longer nose, he can no longer see in front of him what's going on beneath the nose of his own aircraft. So you're sitting there in this airplane with a very cramped windscreen. You've got a periscope sticking up on top. You've got the gun sight taking up a lot of the space in front of you. And then the bad guy simply drops down 2 degrees beneath your nose. You can't tell if he turned right, if he turned left, or if he's still right there in front of you. And that was why they had to raise the seat. They had to get the pilot higher just so you could see over the nose. You'll read a lot about that, the raised canopy being to make it easier to land on carriers. It wasn't anything to do with landing. It was all to do with the fact you couldn't shoot somebody down if you couldn't see him. You had to get your butt up just a little higher, about 5 inches. They moved you forward. That gave you a slightly better view over the front also. And then you could see the bad guys when they tried to get away from you.
I was going to say, I'm sure it had an impact on the accuracy of the weapon system too.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Did the Goodyear didn't the Goodyear Corsairs not have folding wings?
Oh no. Well, let's put it this way: of the nearly 4,000 built, about 1,000 of them were built with the folding wings disabled.
Okay.
They were going out to Marine units. They were going to be. Matter of fact, there are photographs of Corsairs on carriers painted in water paints on the side of the airplane. Says wings won't fold.
Really?
So that nobody starts pushing real hard trying to get those things up. So about 1,000 of the Goodyear Corsairs were designed with all the wing folding mechanism removed. The seams where the two parts of the wings came together, puttied over and smooth. The tail hook removed, and the after half of the tail wheel doors essentially stapled closed, so those wouldn't open either. And it was only for marine use on the islands. Mm-hmm. The ones on carriers were being delivered, not being flown as carrier airplanes.
Was there a particular manufacturer that kind of got a reputation for maybe not putting out a quality aircraft that maybe one of the other competitors was making the same model of at that time? Or was the government guideline? I'm a novice on it. Henry and Jeff are the aviation experts on this podcast. I'm a novice in this particular topic. So yeah, I mean, if there's a particular one, I'm all ears.
Well, there were three manufacturers building Corsairs during the war. You had Vought, the designer. You had Goodyear making the FG Corsairs. You had Brewster, they of Brewster Buffalo fame, and they were making F3A Corsairs. And the story goes that Brewster basically screwed the pooch and was building inferior airplanes, and the Navy didn't want them, and they broke down easily, and they had all these problems. There's no evidence of the truth of that. There were just as many problems with Goodyear Corsairs and with Vought Corsairs as there were with Brewster. Brewster's problem was their management really, really sucked. It was the worst management imaginable.
I was going to ask you if you thought maybe it just came down to public relations problem.
Public relations on one way, but it was internal relations. They, at one point, well, after the Navy closed Goodyear down, closed Brewster down, they had to write up a report of what was wrong. Nothing that was wrong had anything to do with quality of the airplanes. The airplanes were just fine, but they were so slow to produce, and they were so expensive to produce because Goodyear had, I keep saying Goodyear when I mean Brewster. Brewster had clubs that all the members could go to join and have fun while they were at work. And they didn't count if you were, 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes late for work or left early or took long lunches. They just completely failed. And so the Navy basically took over Brewster and brought in Henry Kaiser, he of the ship a day kind of thing. And he reorganized the company. And he got them to the point where they're actually functioning like an airplane company was supposed to function. And all things are going smoothly. The 1D Corsair was going to be shifted over to Brewster production. Goodyear was going to go over and produce the F2G, the Super Corsair. And everybody's going to be happy. Vought was going to switch over to Dash 4s, which they did in November. And Brewster decided to reorganize. And the Navy internal memos say, well, let's just see what they do. We're not going to meddle anymore. But if certain people are brought back in and put in charge again, we're going to shut them down. Sure enough, they brought in the wrong people. And a month later, they get a notice from BuAer saying, sorry, it's our factory and you're out. We're canceling your contracts. And that was the end of Brewster. It had nothing to do with the quality of the airplane. It was the high cost and the slow delivery.
Yeah, you definitely can't have slow delivery in a time like that.
No, there is a war going on.
Well, perfect example. I used to build ambulances for a living for a short period of my life, all the different things I did. Prior to 9/11, the company I worked for lost the New York contract, went to one of our competitors. And that competitor had fallen behind their delivery schedule pre 9/11.
Yeah.
9/11 happened. I think 9 of the 12, 15 trucks that were destroyed were Horton, which is who I worked for. Guess who got that contract back? We did, because our competition, who had the contract prior to 9/11, was so far behind their production schedule. 9/11 happened. New York, the fire department lost so many squads and so many ambulances.
Yeah.
They could not wait on this backlog. And so I remember our whole plant, we just started pushing out New York trucks.
Into high gear.
In a time of emergency, you gotta be able to get that stuff out, and you gotta have that same quality too.
Sure. At a time where so many people pitched in to make things work, you can't be the people or the company that says, I think we deserve a raise. You may deserve a raise, but that's not the time to mention it.
You're not talking about the New Zealand dock workers during World War II, are you?
I have no idea what you're talking about, sir. But there was, and I'm sorry, but I can't remember the company. But before America entered World War II, one of the companies was slowing down production because they didn't want things that were going to be used to stop the Russians. If you'll remember, before June of 41, the Russians were on the, working with the Nazis to divide Europe between them. And so this, say it nicely, Marxist organized company slowed down American production so that we would be less ready, so that it would not interfere with Russia's goals. And that all changed dramatically when Germany attacked Russia, and even more dramatically when Japan attacked us. It's strange stuff.
Real quick, I had a thought earlier when we were talking about the models, and I'll say about all the years that you were involved with it. Was there a point, I can imagine so, because just about every industry is this way now. Was there a point when licensing became a problem? I'm sure early on it was just public domain, and then someone got to say, well, wait a minute, we're losing out on potential revenue here on licensed product. Did that really have an impact on the industry at any point in time?
I believe the saying is 95% of lawyers are giving the rest of them a bad name. When folks start to realize that helping a company build an accurate model of the B-17, for example, is promoting your company. More people see that, hey, you guys did something tremendous and you deserve credit for what you created. Mattered less than, hey, we're getting our cut. And frankly, if that's the only way you can keep your company in business, fine, you do what you have to do. Some companies were, heck, you can do this, but you got to pay us for it. I had this with artwork I was doing for unit insignia for one of the books. Matter of fact, Air Force Colors Volume 3. And one of the companies owned the rights to the characters. And they wanted me to, pay them a certain amount of money to include those characters on the unit insignia in the book. And I wrote back and said, gee, that's very kind of you, but you have to realize you release those rights to the units for insignia to be used on their aircraft. I'm not selling your character for a profit. I'm including them as a historical note. This is what you did, and I'm not going to pay you. Then the company backed away. It's where do you participate? How do you help get the word out that your company has done good stuff? and how do you make enough money to keep your company doing good stuff? There's a balance there in each company. Vought, for instance, I've gotten so much free material from Vought. I just told them what I wanted to do, and they sent me item after item and download after download, and you know, we corresponded with their historical unit, which was mostly retirees, and they were wonderful. They were old fashioned. Hey, we did something good. We want the world to know what we did and that it was good. Now, of course, they're not producing airplanes right now, so I don't know that it's hurting their margin. But I wish more companies could be like that.
Well, it's a little interesting because music, for example, anything prior to 1962 does not have licensing on it. That's why if you listen to smaller radio stations, when they stream their music online or they stream a talk show online, during commercial breaks, if they're not playing commercials, they're playing older music because they don't have to pay to play it.
Sure.
But it's interesting, too, that it's also the license belongs to that of the original recording. That's why you hear some people who are friends with celebrities, that celebrity's band will just re-record the song and then they can use it because it's the original recording where the license is held. It's interesting to see that, you know, when it comes to music, anything prior to 1962, unless it's been remastered since then, it's basically public domain. But when it comes to aircraft from the 40s, not so much, or maybe some of the logos put on it by a particular, maybe media company that has some big ears, but I'm just guessing.
Yeah. Well, my sense of it is, my dad already paid for this.
Yeah.
All right. You built this. You were reimbursed for this. We don't own the rights to actually go out and produce more because there were licensing agreements. For instance, Brewster and Goodyear had to pay a license fee to Vought for every Corsair they built. So yeah,
See,
it kept Vought going.
See, that's kind of surprising because I always just assumed when it came to these manufacturers, it was kind of hoisted upon them by the government saying, okay, hey, we need planes. We'll give you the contract or you earn the contract. To me, the fact that they got a contract and then had to pay licensing to build the plane or the aircraft that the government's asking them to build, licensing on just building it, that never even occurred to me.
It started in the very early 20s. The Martin bomber, the twin engine biplane, Billy Mitchell's favorite. Let's sink German battleships and have a good time for all. Well, there were objections from several companies, Curtiss, Low Willard Fowler. I can't remember who the third one was, but all right, so Martin designed this thing. That doesn't mean they should be the only ones that can sell them to the government. We could build that airplane cheaper than they could. And sure enough, these other companies got the right to deliver Martin bombers to the government. That's why you had the NBS-1. That's why Low Willard Fowler and Curtiss got together and bought up enough wood to make the structures, to make MB-1s. They bought so much wood at such a good price, they could build them cheaper than Martin could. And they were building them without a licensing fee back then. So there was an awful lot that had to change and did. That whole 20s, 30s build up between the wars, it fascinates me. I'm spending a lot of time right now digging out material of that period and learning just the craziest things that you wouldn't expect of how they organized, how they planned, what they thought was legal, what they thought wasn't legal. It's just a great period, and it's so evolutionary. I'll toss another story at you. I have no idea how we're doing on time.
We're good.
You're going to have to kick me off, but we're looking at the day after Christmas, 1929. There's a first lieutenant at Wright Field, and he is responsible, first lieutenant, mind you, responsible for the decision making on a competition for five new observation aircraft. Now, 4 of the aircraft did pretty well and were rated, and one of those was selected. The 5th aircraft was eliminated from the competition. And the reason it was eliminated was because it had used aluminum structure for the wings. All the ribs and all the formers and the spars were made out of aluminum. Now, like a real airplane should be, of course, they were covered with canvas or linen or whatever the fabric was. But this was too revolutionary. This whole idea of using aluminum as part of the structure of the airplane just wasn't there. And the young lieutenant writes it all up as we had to reject the technology is too advanced for it. Well, let's see, that's day after Christmas 29. Sometime in January 30, he has his first son. And then you jump forward 40 years, day after Christmas 1969. And that young lieutenant has retired from the Air Force. He made lieutenant general. And you can turn to that son of his and say, so tell me, Buzz, what was it like to be the second man to walk on the moon?
That's crazy.
The change in 40 years from we can't trust aluminum to, hey, I just had a boy that walked on the moon.
And imagine how many aircraft could have been saved if the wings weren't burning because they're constructed out of wood and there was an engine fire.
It was bad. It's surprising how much time was spent developing fireproof paints and fireproof dopes and trying to protect against in-flight fires. Didn't always work.
One more. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say that comes up a lot in, the more I've been reading about World War II, the more it makes me want to read about World War I and the interwar years. Yeah. And burning up in an aircraft. There's a book, Heroes of the Sunlit Sky, and it basically gives you 5 or 6 of the major air forces that were involved in the First World War, and a list of the pilots, almost essentially, I think it's in alphabetical order or something by last name. There's no particular chronology to the book. It's just, okay, the British Air Forces and a bunch of stories, and then the American, the German, French. But there was definitely a common theme where, the fires were so prevalent, and just what a terrible way to go. Sure. And an all too common way to go because of the construction, because of how things were built, how it was designed. Yeah. It's terrible. Golly, terrible. Sure. But, it's things like that that help you understand as things progressed, as the necessity for these war machines happened out of what we thought we needed, and then what we actually did need, because now we are at war. Yeah. It's interesting to see those changes and to see what facilitated those changes. Because I'm a big Billy Mitchell fan, and the sinking of the Ostfriesland is it's pivotal. It's so important. What happened in 1921 is so relevant in 1941 that it's just ridiculous. It's a shame that man did not live to see the true fruits of what he was trying to do. But all the more proof that the way I feel is the deeper we can look into the past, the clearer we can see the future. And I truly believe in that. And I think Don needs to make that a t-shirt. Actually, it just came to me. And I think that's the new What's the Scuttlebutt t-shirt.
Send it to me and we'll make it happen.
It's engraved in stone outside the National Archives. What is past is prologue. And it's still true. I saw one of your episodes recently where you were talking about Ernst Röhm, the photos from Nuremberg. Mm-hmm. Don't know how long ago that episode aired, but I don't even remember who had the photos, but a relative had been at Nuremberg after the war, and there were all these photos blowing around. He collected them up.
Yes, who was
that? That was like one of the first episodes after I joined.
Yes.
Oh, really? That's right, because you were being introduced, of course. So it's a much older episode than I thought.
It was the guy's grandfather.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a friend of mine. That's a friend of mine who, in fact, I just had a cigar with him 2 nights ago. Him and I and some others are opening a restaurant here in Burnett. Yeah. His dad was in the Third Army.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
My dad personally winning the war, and I noticed that. But I think the significance Ernst Röhm is lost on an awful lot of the youth today because they're going to be in trouble. Ernst Röhm was in charge of the brown shirts.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And the brown shirts were the Nazi
Sturmabteilung.
Pardon?
Stormabteilung, the SA.
Yes, exactly. They were the guys who went around. They were the thugs. When you need somebody to go and disrupt the political party, you send the thugs. When you need somebody to be evil and do nasty things to anybody out there, the brown shirts are available. And Ernst Röhm was the head of that. And the Nazis finally got enough power that they no longer needed the brown shirts. That meant they no longer needed Ernst Röhm, which is, they trumped up charges and, executed them and broke up the brown shirts. Well, we've got the same thing going on today. And I don't want to sound too political, but there are certain political organizations that show up across the river in DC and regularly block traffic. And, people are being paid for and sent.
Mm-hmm.
Certain political parties have the ability to deny any contact with these organizations, but everybody there is working for some of these political parties. They will show up in front of certain people's houses and raise a ruckus. At some point, if those political parties do get the power they desire, I'm trying to stay neutrally political, and
Sure.
It's almost impossible, but those people will be the brown shirts of the 2020s. They all see themselves as future leaders in the new party, but right now they're thugs, and they will always be thugs. And when power is finally solidified, the first thing you do, whether you be the French revolutionaries, whether you be the Nazis, hell, whether you be the Jacobites, you get rid of the thugs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're fighting for something they can never have. They may get it for other people, and I hope they don't, but it keeps repeating itself. Ernst Röhm and the brown shirts, it's a cyclic story. It goes on and on and on.
There's an interesting series on Netflix called Peaky Blinders.
Yes.
And are you familiar with it, Jeff or Henry?
I am not.
It's a great show. It's on Netflix. It's originally a BBC show. It starts off, season 1 is roughly a little bit after World War I. It's basically, there's a kind of a English mob family that when all the guys were away at World War I, the women ran all the gambling, the running of the numbers and all the enforcing, and the guys came home and they kind of get their place. Well, as they're on like season 6 now, and it's right around 1937, 1938, and you're starting to see the development of these new political parties. And this last season, prior to last season, they introduced Mr. Sir Oswald Mosley, who was a fascist leader who was trying to run to be Prime Minister of Britain. And Tommy Shelby, the leader of the Peaky Blinders, he's been basically dubbed by Churchill himself to kind of slip in with this party to try to relay information. So it's interesting that this little English gangster show that took place after, World War I, it's really gained a lot of popularity amongst young kids. They're now starting to get a little bit of history snuck in on them. And as you're talking about brown shirts and all that, you're starting to see the development of this party. And it's nice to see it kind of not being sugar-coated, and it being snuck into the storyline. But before we wrap it up, mail call time. It's been a while since we've done a mail call time, and if you guys want to email us, please do so at mailcall@WTSPWorldWar2.com. Mr. Alexander Richard Marshall sent us a nice long email. I'm just going to read the first half because, we have asked and suggested that if you're a listener of the show and you have some content that you think you can come on the show and talk about, we'll be more than happy to have you, kind of like tonight's episode. And so Alex writes, "Hello, Don. My name's Alex. Been a long-time listener of the podcast and a Patreon supporter. Thank you for that. Huge fan of the show. I'm a fellow reenactor out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and never knew there were any like-minded folks around me until I came across your podcast, which got me in touch with a whole mess of cats from all over the state. Currently, I'm an active member of World War II Armor and a member of B Company 502nd out of Ohio, but have many other impressions, currently working on an L35 USMC on Guadalcanal, something I have to thank your show for. I would love to absolutely come on your show and talk smack about whatever makes you guys scratch your heads in the conflict." And so he goes on making suggestions. And so we're going to look into getting Alex on the show. But thank you, Alex. And I love the fact that our little podcast helped you find people in your area to get you into the reenacting community and help you build so many different impressions. And so we want to hear from everybody else. Please email us at mailcall@WTSPWorldWar2.com. And if you want to support the show, please head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com. Click on that Patreon link, like and sign up. And it's $1 a month. There's a couple other plans. Mr. Henry Sledge was on a impromptu before we did last week's show. We actually were talking just off the whim for like 20 minutes for the show, so I just took that recording, threw it up there so you guys can hear that. My brother and I did an episode for the OG5 podcast. We got to get Jeff on there, but yeah, sign up. You get access to the OG5 podcast. You get t-shirts, stickers, and all that good stuff. And if you guys don't mind, please head over to youtube.com, look for Digital 410, and like and subscribe and view our videos. Henry, you got anything coming down the pike you want to plug?
Yeah, my article in World War II magazine will hit the newsstands August 8th.
Beautiful.
Good.
How about you, Jeff? You're a busy man.
I just talk fun stuff. I finally got to start. I'm working on I've never built a Spitfire, so I'm working on a Mark V Spitfire right now. You know, I'm still on probably always will be on the Mighty Eighth kick, but this particular Spitfire I'm probably going to display with a B-17 as they were, you know, spring, summer of 1943, more often than not, they were pulled for their fighter escorts. So I've done a P-47. I've got a P-51 I'm going to get around to doing. But I couldn't resist a Spitfire and a 1/48 scale. I've got a Follow Me Jeep that I just found for a fair price at the hobby shop I was talking about. So yeah, that's it. You know.
Now, is it frowned upon when you do those airplanes if you were to paint the engine blocks Chevy orange?
When you put it together, you're not going to see it anyway.
So no one knows but you and the bottle of glue and the paint.
Just trust me. I mean, that B-17 I did, you know, there's 1,000 things in there that I'm proud of that when I put it together, nobody's ever going to know it's there.
How about a pro tip for all the people? I know back when I was making model airplanes, how do you get the cockpit glued on without getting your fingerprint smudges all over the glass?
They have glazing glues that you can use that don't run, don't fume, and just hold everything in place. And if you can't find one of those, Elmer's white glue. Even if it goes all wrong, you just rip the thing off with your fingers, wash the glue off, and start over.
I don't think people give Elmer's white glue credit for strength and durability. I took 8 semesters of ceramics class, and they said if your ceramics breaks, Elmer's glue is the #1 glue to use.
Yep, it is. It's wonderful. But then again, ceramics are porous.
Yep.
That makes the difference.
Mr. Bell, you got anything to plug before we wrap up this episode?
No, I'm just living life, enjoying every minute, and I had a wonderful time talking with you gentlemen. I really appreciate the invite tonight.
Oh, fantastic. We're happy to help you. And that is going to wrap it up for this episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II based podcast. We want to thank each and every one of you for your continued support. And as always, we will talk to you all next week.
This has been a Digital 410 production.